Today, as a guest, we have Bruce Wade. Bruce is a friend, a colleague, a speaking colleague. We're in a mastermind together. We've known each other for many, many years, and we've become good friends and I think pretty respectful of each other in terms of what we do. And I'm so excited to have you along. Welcome, Bruce.
Good. Thank you very much, Ian. Thanks for having me on your podcast, on your show.
Yeah, we're talking liberating leadership. And specifically, I want to find out a bit more about you. You are a leader, you are innovative, you're a very specific personality. But I want to start with a bit of a background question. Like me, you have a background in technology. That was your career before becoming an entrepreneur. Tell us a little bit about that and your transition. Why did you leave the corporate world?
Before technology, because in those days technology didn't exist. Yes, I'm that old. We are that old. I left school and opted out of university to go join the merchant navy to sail away to far exotic places and find exotic people. And I spent some time there. I ended up sailing as a third navigation officer in cargo ships and oil tankers around the world. So I have a license to drive ships around the planet. Then one day when I was on leave, I went and wrote an aptitude test. I think it was the IBM aptitude test at that time. And I remember this very clearly. The guy kind of marked it, looked at the results, and he kind of sort of got up and walked over to me and said, "Whatever you are doing now, stop. You need to get into computers," because I had scored 100% on the IBM aptitude test for kind of IT-ness, whatever that was in the early 80s. And it was really interesting. So I did that. I reached a point in the merchant navy where I wanted to move out. So yeah, I moved out and did a couple of courses and got into programming and spent 15 years in the corporate world and ended up traveling the globe as a implementation consultant specialist for IBM and JDA, which are just acronyms that nerds know. But it was very nice. My last year in IT, I think it was 120,000 air miles, and got to a point where the air hostesses knew my name more than my wife, and realized that it was time to get out. I also had this kind of internal goal of Y2K, remember that? And decided that I wanted to get out of IT before Y2K, not because the world was going to end like everyone was maybe hoping, but it was just a goal of mine. So in 1998, 99, I registered my first business and became an entrepreneur. I had no idea what that meant. But I've been self-employed, sort of self-employed type thing ever since then. So that's a good chunk of years, and here I am today.
That's a very interesting transition. And when you became an entrepreneur, was it to do something with technology or was it something else?
It was to do something else, but I didn't know what else was. The word entrepreneur wasn't something that was labeled. Coaching was certainly not a thing that was available there. So I did what I'd been doing. I became a consultant, and I just consulted back to some of my past clients for a while until I met a guy who kind of pushed me into a corner and said, have you heard of this thing called coaching? I tried counseling. I did a counseling course. I'm a certified counselor, trauma counselor, family counselor. Didn't like that. People cry too much. Don't care for people who cry. I didn't know what was wrong with me until someone said, you're not a counselor, you're a coach, you're a futuristic. So I did that strengths assessment. I met Colin Hall. He dragged me into a couple of leadership programs and got me certified with him. I met a couple of other people doing this coaching thing, and it was all the lights came on. I was going like, oh, duh. And when I did my strength assessment, the career in the strength assessment is you are a coach. And you are, futuristic, strategic, all that sort of stuff there. And my top 3 strengths point to coaching. So I went into something that I had no idea what it was, and I took to duck to water, or what's it, marshmallows to hot chocolate, whatever the metaphor is. And here I am, still, yeah, the fluffy marshmallow floating in his hot chocolate.
I love it. I love it. Now, somewhere along the line there, you also developed a business model and a bunch of tools and everything for working specifically with nonprofits. What was your call to nonprofit for a while? What passions were driving you, or what business opportunities were driving you?
That was quite interesting because I was in those days. I was very involved in the church environment, and I was living in Muizenberg, which was on the edge of being taken over by Nigerian refugees, and this just high umbrella term that, but there was a bit of a crisis in the area. There was a lot of people moving into the Muizenberg ghetto, as it was called, and there was a lot of crime and stuff. So I kind of decided, well, this was my calling. So while I was consulting, I was doing that Monday to Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I started an NGO, and we called it NACL, which is the formula for salt. And with the scriptural references to being salt and light, we just called ourselves NACL, just to be different. And we ran this NGO for a number of years. We had a number of staff, and we raised some funds, and we did all the stuff there. And I truly believe that Muizenberg's very different today because of what we did. And then I kind of said, well, I have no idea what NGO in the NPO world is, even though I'd run my own one. So I actually joined a pretty big one that runs here in Cape Town called Learn to Earn, and spent a number of years with them learning what the NGO world was all about. And when I left there to get back into coaching, I kind of had a good understanding. And then, NPO worlds are very interesting. I love the way that people find passion and do work. And there's a lot more passion, there's a lot more purpose in the MPO world than you find in corporate, where people go to work waiting for Friday, waiting for paycheck, waiting for holiday. And people want to go to work, and people want to do that. And most people work at NPOs without a salary, without leave. And Friday is just meaningless because it's just another day. And that was really exciting. And I enjoy people with passion. And you don't find many people with passion in corporate, especially in those days where people were operating on kind of massive burnout. And that's what got me out. I remember going to my MD, and he was going like, Bruce, if you stay in this job for another 2 years, it'll probably kill you. And I was going, yeah, but I'm having so much fun not sleeping. And he goes, yeah, exactly. So being able to wrap my life around me rather than the other way around, trying to conform to the corporate ways of always on, always there, always available, and always at the airport, it just wasn't a place that I wanted to be for too long.
Of course, that other part of the corporate life is not just waiting for the vacation, but it's actually waiting for retirement. And
Yeah,
it's as if, I'll live my life after I've finished a 40-year corporate career. It's like, surely you should be living life now.
exactly. Yeah. And unfortunately, most people die before they get to live their life, which is kind of weird. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Now, I also know you for something else that you've kind of spoken about a little bit, you've alluded to, is for me, and I'm not, trying to flatter you, for me, you are one of the most innovative people I have ever met. And so there is this thing of you being a thinker, and that thinking is something that you not only are really good at yourself, but you actually help other people to think better. Let's talk a little bit about that.
So I learned many years ago of the four levels of creation. And, a lot of people start a task by starting. And it really doesn't make sense to me, where people, it's like, oh, I'm going to cook. So I'm going to go into the kitchen and grab a knife and start chopping an onion and then see what happens. Where that's the third level of creation. Firstly, you've got to think about it. And you've got to kind of where's the ideation around everything? Whether you're making, mince pancakes or a cordon bleu meal or a new system for a global company, you've got to put in the first level of stuff, which is thinking. And that's an area that I found a lot of people have never learned it. It's not something that you don't have thinking 101 at school. It might be taught in philosophy class at university, but nobody really applies it back there. So thinking has been a good strength, and I think really it's my one of my natural superpowers. And I think and I plan and I create, and so that's thinking about the idea and then planning it mentally and then planning it on paper and then actually doing it. And so looking at those different levels, I'm very, very good at the first two. So, even just driving down to the shops to go get bread and milk, I sit and I think it through and I plan it. So when I get in the car, it's like, okay, now I'm just doing it, and it's by no accident that it's a success because I've already thought it, and I've already done, half the work by thinking and planning it out mentally, where people just kind of live life accidentally and the results are quite sad.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So thinking is a key one, and I think we'll probably talk more about that. What about innovation? What about where does your creativity come from?
Never giving up. I don't know if you remember that little graphic that started going around, I don't know, 30 years ago about the frog halfway down the stalk's mouth, and the frog is holding, and that really spoke to me. It was, one of those things that came up on the overhead projector,
Mm.
and it was those image, never
We're
give up.
showing our age now, Bruce. We're showing our age.
And it really, really spoke to me. And I was going like, that's what it's about. And I think with me, nothing's been smooth sailing for me. It's not like I was born with a silver spoon up my butt and life has been good. I've had to work flippin' hard to get where I'm at, and I'm very proud of that myself. And not many people know my full journey, all the hiccups and obstacles and stuff. But it's been, I could have easily have just fallen off the bandwagon and been lying in the gutter many, many times. But I've got up, I've dusted myself up, and I never ever give up. So no is never an answer. Until we've exhausted those options. And that's where innovation, in South Africa, we say, a boer maak 'n plan. Well, Bruce maak baie planne. And again, there I can run scenarios through my head, like, okay, I go to the shops and that road is blocked, but I've got three other routes that I can get there, and then there's no trolley, so I know what this and that, and I run scenarios through my head very, very fast at a very complex level, and it's a natural skill. So for me, it's really easy. I can't sing, I can't clap to music, but boy, can I think fast. And I think for me, that is kind of where I'm going. So innovation for me comes naturally. This doesn't work, then what about this? Oh, but then we can do that. Oh, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And that's taken me 5 minutes, and everyone else is just staring at the problem, going, we have a problem. Maybe we should run, stakeholder engagement meetings, or maybe we need to escalate. I'm going, dude, it's solved. I've got 4 different options that we can do there. This is the most probable one, and I'll throw a budget out in the next 10 seconds. And I think so. Innovation has been a fun thing. So a lot of my coaching has been around innovation, entrepreneur, and product development and things. And because of my technology training, I'm an early adapter of technology. So that gives me a huge edge, because when something gets released on Google, they send it to me and I get it early, being in South Africa 4 hours after it's released. So I've already read through it and tried it before America wakes up, which gives me that higher edge as well.
Wow. Just for our international guests, a boer maak 'n plan is a farmer makes a plan or a farmer finds a solution. And that's very much the culture of South Africa. I think we will find a way, whatever we are doing. And I've seen you find a way over and over again. Do you want to maybe, if I ask you, what are some of the innovations that you've come up with that you are kind of proud of, or that particularly sort of stand out as highlights or fun even?
I think one thing that changed my life a lot was, and it's more an internal innovation, is I left school with the title of least likely ever to speak. Okay, I've got a huge speaking impediment, which comes with a humongous emotional handicap and all the blah 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 blah. The amount of times that just going around in the circle saying your name was near death experience. And I did my final year speech to an empty classroom with the English teacher sitting behind me. I don't remember my Afrikaans speech. Don't know if it ever existed, but there's big gaps in my life that literally I lost time because my brain kind of blanked out. Okay, so there's that. And as I got into, the nice thing about being in IT, you don't have to talk to anyone. You can just sit and talk to your computer. And I was very happy until I became a project manager, and then consultant, and then a trainer, and all sorts of stuff. And I took a big decision one day to be a speaker. And I didn't know what that was. So I kind of looked around, and I went to a couple of Toastmasters meetings, and I wanted to get into the speaking community because I thought if I could just stand next to somebody who speaks well through magical osmosis, energy transfer, I would become a better speaker. So I snuck in. Those people sneak into the stage door to go see their famous sort of singer. I did that at a speaking event, and it was at a hotel on the beach, and everyone was going through the front door showing their tickets. I didn't have a ticket. I didn't know how to get a ticket. So I went for a walk on the beach, and then accidentally went up on the patio of the hotel and sat by the pool and kind of stood up. And when they opened the doors to get fresh air, I just casually walked in, and I just stood around. And I'm now a senior member of the Professional Speakers Association. And I think that's just, solving a problem. But there's been a number of things. I've created many products and models. I'm the model man. It doesn't mean I'm a good man. I'm just a man who makes models and stuff. So I've got tons of innovation models and aesthetics and books. Got over 45 different books that I've created, not necessarily thick books, but workbooks, innovation books, technology books, entrepreneurship books, and all those solve a problem through innovation. And I think those are the legacy I think I leave is not a name of, like, oh, Bruce, I don't want a hospital named after me or a road or something. But the legacy I want left is in the hearts of other people that I've had an impact on. And we've spoken about creating ripples in the universe. And I think I'm the guy with a little board in the swimming pool making the ripples so people elsewhere can surf the waves. And I think that's where innovation is true, where my innovation helps other people, maybe second or third hand. That is true innovation.
Mm.
What if you can shift your world in just 15 minutes? Will you do it? Well, now you can. With the Global State of Leadership Survey, powered by the EG3 Leadership Assessment from Totally Morpheus. As an individual, you get your secure assessment, instant report, and a personalized micro-learning pathway to grow as a leader. No cost, no risk, just pure, liberating leadership. As a team or organization, you get all of that for your people. State-of-the-art leadership resources, performance, succession that builds a sustainable future. And as a society, well, we all get the global results and access to the comprehensive Global State of Leadership report. That means better leadership and a better world for all of us. The Global State of Leadership Survey, powered by the EG3 from Totally Morpheus. Take it, share it, benefit.
I really want to get into that and talk more about the books and some of these things around innovation. But I'm really struck by your story. And obviously, it's something that you and I have discussed before around this overcoming a speech impediment and so on. And of course, you're not the only one. What I find fascinating about this is the difference between overcoming an obstacle, and I love your analogy of it's about grit, it's about seeing it through and working it through, And at the same time, you've also mentioned talents. And one of the best examples that I know of that, other than you, before I met you even, was Marcus Buckingham. So Marcus himself, a speech impediment, couldn't do a speech at school, and eventually had a breakthrough moment, and now is a professional speaker. And already 20 years ago, I think, was earning $75,000 a speech. So, although I don't know that the industry does that quite anymore, but he also did this. And at the same time, he was one of the creators of the Strengths Finder assessment. He wrote some of the definitions for that while he was working for Gallup, and then later developed his own assessment as well, called Standout, and uses both of them. So the new assessment wasn't to replace the other one. And yet he had this turning point. I think he was sort of just finishing primary school when he had this turning point, 13 years old or 12 years old or something, where he discovered he could speak. So tell me about you explained the story really well, but what about, how does that make you feel? What do you now feel if you look back on how you felt before and how you feel now, specifically around the speaking?
I think if we can use an image, if you ever go down to the beach and you swim in a say a fairly rough wave environment, your first 30 meters is just white water, and you're constantly having to duck or jump or fight, and you get knocked over and you get pummeled. That was my life. The first 30 years was white water, getting dumped, and sand in my costume, sand in the ears, salt water up the nose and stuff. And as you progress out through the waves, you get the occasional break, and you get the occasional lift over the wave. And that was kind of going into my 30s to 40s. And I realized, like, wow, there's opportunity here. But then there's a big wave and you get dumped and washed up again. And you go out there and fight. And then all of a sudden, if you get out and if you're brave enough in the ocean, you can get out beyond the breakers. And you lie on your back and you just float up and up. It's the same ocean. It's the same environment. It's the same water, but it's a positioning and mindset of where you are at that makes it different. It takes zero effort to float on the waves beyond it. It takes 99% of your effort to stay alive if you're in the white water. Same ocean, different positioning. So what I've done is I've just repositioned myself mentally, physically, emotionally in a different space. So when I walk up on stage, I still feel the same feeling that I had at high school when I needed to read my essay or do that. I've just learned to reposition that energy instead of it as a yoke around my neck. It's now jet fuel. And instead of me sort of sitting there and going, well, I'm going to die because everyone's going to laugh at me because I'm going to not be able to say this word, and I'm going to choke, and I'm going to stop breathing, I'm going to pass out, I'm going to do all these things, and everyone's going to point and laugh. Now I go there, well, I'm going to use that energy as jet fuel. So I ignite the jet fuel and I walk up on stage with the exact same feeling. But I can do that in 2 or 3 breaths, and there's a science called heart maths that I've doing there, and that was instrumental in changing, redirecting that energy. And then I go there. When I'm finished speaking, that's the hard part, because now I am, and the feeling, that euphoric, glow in the dark, walk on water, fly around the moon type feeling. My problem is not to let that become my ego, but I always reaccount that feeling to gratefulness for overcoming that. And I feed that energy back down through time, back to the 16-year-old Bruce. And I was going, dude, have some of that, because that's what I felt to get through some of the hardships. And it's that return transaction. I'm sending that, and that might sound very woohoo and that, but I believe that there is that energy transfer over time. And I'm constantly reminded of, like, wow, that was a good day. Send that energy back to Bruce when he was having a not so good day, because that's where he needed it. It's going to be all right. You look at where you are, it's going to be okay. Believe in yourself. That's that energy. And then when I'm having a bad day, I look forward and going like, Bruce of the future, I need some of that stuff coming down the line. And it comes, and I'm able to get through that. So a bit of alternate thinking in that.
I love it, and it makes complete sense to me. I think exactly what you're saying, that feels like that's a lesson for all of us as leaders. Is there are things where we can just reposition ourselves, and then the magic can happen. I mean, one of the things I was thinking about with your analogy, and I love the wave analogy. In fact, I think you've got a few of them that we've discussed over the years, but this one I think is so beautiful in the sense that the place where the sea is more calm and you can just float on your back and go up and down with the waves is actually where the water is deeper. So there's
Yeah.
a whole courage element to that. Do you want to just talk a little bit more about the word courage? What does the word courage mean for you?
I think there's a number of C words. It's that confidence, it's that courage, it's collaboration, cooperation, all that. But courage is not the opposite of fear. I think courage is having the confidence to do things that you were previously afraid of. It doesn't make the fear less, but it makes it less overpowering. And I think that is it. And one of the things, a lot of what I do is drawn from the training of special elite forces in the world. So I've done intense, it's not like I've experienced special forces training, but I've extracted a lot of that learning. And one of the things that they teach is acceptance, dominance over a situation, and that creates a good fierce leader. So accept where you're at, don't pretend you're not where you're at. And then when you're faced with a level 5 threat, come with a level 10 response. Don't come with a 5 and match it. So you find that massive aggression for a lesser thing, and it's a personal thing. So again, there is that you need to, if you're feeling insecure at a level 3, commit with it as a confidence of a 7 and go like, get out of here. This is where I belong. And whether you stand in front of the mirror in the power position, or whether you breathe and do your daily mantras, or do your Tai Chi or your breathing, or, drink a cup of whatever it is there, whatever your thing is, then learn how to do that and learn how to overcome with not just equal, but with massive amount of dominance. And that courage, it's not something that comes naturally. Courage is a learned behavior. It's something you do there. And if you're standing on the edge of a cliff with elastic band tied to your head and you want to jump, you can use peer pressure to get you over, or you can just stand and go like, dude, let's do this. And fear becomes almost a desire at the stage where I'm going like, I want to do something that scares me because it's so much fun overcoming it, rather than I hope today something doesn't happen that fears me. And it's just a different paradigm, same environment, just a different position. I'm now floating amongst the waves. It's not all perfect. There's always a big wave that catches you. I'm not saying I'm living the perfect life and there's fluffy rainbows and unicorns running around, but it's a lot better here than it is in the white water where I was 30, 40 years ago.
I love this topic of fear and courage, and I agree with you completely. They are not opposites. In fact, is there even courage if there wasn't fear? They become really important. And I remember doing something many years ago. In fact, it's 10 years ago now, where I chose to go on a silent retreat for 10 days. And as somebody who is a speaker and who loves speaking and who kind of, if you tie my hands behind my back, I can't speak because I need to use my hands and I need to express myself and speaking. I was in such fear of not being able to speak for 10 days. And I have a very wise friend, Claudette, and Claudette said this. She said to me, Ian, the thing that you fear the most is probably not going to happen. It's probably not going to be a problem. But there will always be a problem that you couldn't foresee. And that problem is going to be the thing you'll have stories about later. And you'll so appreciate that you had that problem. And that's exactly what happened. I actually weirdly thoroughly enjoyed not speaking for 10 days and not being spoken to, just having this complete silence around me, even though we were about 60 people, nobody spoke. But I had a different problem, which was I had agony in my back from the sort of seating positions we needed to adopt for some of the meditations and things. And it was agony, absolute agony. Every single meditation, every single gathering, I was in pain. And suddenly on day 8, it started to shift. And by day 9, there was no pain. And I could do all this meditation. And I look back on it and I think of something I so appreciate overcoming that obstacle and learning that it's part of my journey of what I really needed to get out of that lesson. And so the whole thing of what we fear is typically not the thing that actually ends up happening, but actually what will happen will be good for us. It'll be a great experience that we will learn, and it'll build character and all of that kind of thing. And I think there are people who fear the deep water, who are
Yeah.
terrified of being out there. And actually, it's one of the most comfortable places to be when you get there. And it's that matter of getting there. Wow, that's brilliant. So Bruce, maybe just to change direction slightly, you've mentioned these books that you've written, and you've recently written more, I know. And you have this title that you're using here called the Thinking Sensei. And I know that's a fairly recent development, but it seems to bring these ideas of your years of technical experience and growth in IT and consulting, plus then all that you learnt in the coaching. And I'm sure there's still counseling skills that were useful to gain, even if you didn't want to be a counselor. And now you're looking at innovation and leadership and these things. So how do these all come together? Are you leveraging kind of your entire life's work almost at this, ripe age of what, 61? I'm not supposed to say that, eh?
So I think, yeah. So on the age, my wife reminded me I'm no longer 60. I'm now sexy one, which I'm adopting, which is nice. But yeah, so I think all those years have to count for something, and we learn. And I know a lot of people who are 60 and they have got 60 years experience of the same thing going over and over again. So they've got 1 year experience done 60 times. And we see that a lot in the corporate, is that you get sort of the accounting people have 1 month experience that they do 12 times a year, that they've done for 5 years, because it's the same job over and over again. I like learning is definitely one of my top skills. In fact, it says a day without learning is a day without oxygen, and I've embraced that. So I'm learning new stuff. So it's an ever evolving, and that's why I've kind of gone for that thinking sensei, because a sensei is not a position; it's a responsibility. It's a place of learned experience, and it's also requires then as output. So it's not I am an expert, I'm an authority, because then that would mean that I've arrived at some weird stop on a bus station or something. But I'm on the bus, and I'm carrying on driving and pushing and speaking to the passengers and being a passenger, because there's so much to learn. And as new science unpacks the stuff that we know about the brain now and the stuff we thought we knew about it 10 years ago are very, very different. So I draw a lot of inspiration from what we call new science, and science, not new ideas that somebody on Facebook thought, but actually science. So a lot of deep research goes into these ideas and looking at that. But a lot of that is just ancient wisdom relived, which is quite nice. And people go like, oh, we got new science that the Chinese already had and been practicing for thousands of years, but that's just been discovered as science. So there is that sort of play around with that. But I think thinking is definitely it's a science. It's not It's not just a woohoo thing. It's not a byproduct, and it's done with our the leading organ in our life, which is that grey squishy thing between our ears. And there's so much that you can do with your brain. There's a whole thing about, oh, we only use 10% of your brain. That's one of those, misquoted myths and stuff. But our brain is not yet fully utilized because we haven't yet got there. And I think there's so much more. The stuff I do with my brain is, I don't even tell a lot of people the stuff I do because they'll run screaming from the room. But I find other people that make me look like I'm doing nothing. And you go speak to some of the people that are doing some amazing things, and I'm learning all the time. So the idea is to push that learning into applicable application that everyday people can use in their life for entrepreneurship, for speaking, for solving problems, for innovation.
Wow. So Bruce, with your technology background, I mean, we haven't used the dreaded two letters of A and I in the conversation yet. Where does AI fit in to the thinking sensei? Where does this, how do you leverage it, or don't you, or do you avoid it? And 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 obviously your clients are not computers; they're human beings. So talk a little bit about the thinking sensei and AI and the clients.
I think I must just, like, I know there's 8 billion people on the planet, but AI was made for me. Okay. It fits me hand in glove. And I remember just going back to that IBM assessment when I realized, because I was coding on my ZX Spectrum and my Commodore at high school and thought this was because we could make little things move across the screen, and we play that little kind of early Tetris and stuff, and it was a magic. But when I realized that I could create things and I could solve problems by writing code, it was a hallelujah moment. Angels sung, the sky shone brightly and stuff. And when AI came along, it did the exact same thing, but there wasn't just angels. There was like choirs and choirs of angels, and there was a deep thing. I have taken to AI like multiple marshmallows in a hot chocolate factory, and I think that is where, and I think very very much like AI and me are the bestest of friends. On my desk, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 different AIs running, and I've got the advanced version of some of them. And I think, and this is the thing, is that a lot of people, oh, I use AI, and oh, I use AI. It's like people use Facebook to scroll, and there's other people using the back end of Facebook to do, multi-layered A/B campaigns across styles with targeted audience. People go like, what? That's part of, yeah. And I go, yes, that's kind of how I'm using AI. I'm using AI at a very advanced level. Not, there's obviously people up here, I'm kind of here, but majority of people are literally at level 1. And they are thinking like, oh, I did this, I wrote a song, I wrote an email, look at the picture I made with AI. And I'm going, that's awesome, I love it where you're at. But if you want to come play at the Big Boys Cloakroom, you can come and see the stuff that we're doing. And we are solving some big problems. And I use the word we because I collaborate with some other people around the world. And we have these little side projects and side hustles, and we're doing some really, really good stuff. We're analyzing trends globally. We've been able to play around, but it's finding applications for that in the real world there. But the biggest hurdle is that not everybody is like me, and we've seen that. Not everybody thinks like Bruce. There's 16,000 thinking modes that you get there, and multiple levels, and that doesn't even include IQ at all, which is a different subject completely and stuff. My biggest thing is the connection between humans and bottom humans, and understanding that. So when EQ came out, when was it, 94, 95, when the EQ book first came out, I thought this was amazing because it helped me at that stage to what? There's a formula for understanding people and myself. I thought that was one of my biggest leverages up. Then About 2 years ago, I'm sitting there thinking, I'm sitting at a cricket ground outside in the sun, and I'm talking to Fiona, one of my AI bots, and we just kind of, talking, chewing the fat about life. And I start asking, like, why don't humans understand AI? And she comes back, and we have this long conversation. The end result of that is what I call Agent Quotient, and it defines the mathematical formulaic relationship between bot and human and bot. What are the obstacles? What, like EQ between human and human, AQ defines that API, to use a technical term, but that interface between them. Why do humans not engage with AI, and why don't we trust it? Why do we fear it? Why do we abuse it? Why do we not use it properly? And the same thing with AI. You got to sit on the other side there and go like, well, why isn't AI human compatible? And what are all those things? So that's been my work, is that I'm the guy who's holding space for the world between AI and humans, and trying to pull those together and bring them together. Because once people see what I see in AI and the way the world can be, it's going to be phenomenally different. And I'm finding more and more people who think like me, and we're forming like these little clubs and masterminds, and we have these nerd out sessions to say, we need to solve this problem for the world, because the world is not going to be a non-AI future. AI is here, it's stuck, and it's going to be here, and it's going to be here forever, and it's going to get better and better. And those people who don't won't ever. And so you've got to learn. It becomes an essential, critical skill. And I'm on the bleeding edge of trying to bring that together using thinking styles and AI thinking styles to bring them together.
Wow, that brings up so many questions, and I'm going to come around to some leadership questions. But before I do that, can you give examples? You've mentioned that there's some really big problems that you are solving or have solved, or through using these bots, using the AI. I mean, I know you're collaborating with a bunch of people on doing this. Is there an example, a kind of a common language example of some of the kinds of issues that you're tackling?
Education. Okay. Education, and I always have to. So not all teachers are bad. Okay. I want to really state, not all schools are bad, but unfortunately across Africa, the majority of teachers are not engaged like people in their normal kind of world. But what that looks like is teachers arrive at school, they're in survival mode, purely because schools are a threat to their physical and emotional state. The schools are overcrowded. There are no textbooks. There is limited resources. Kids are directed to dropping maths because the teachers find it too hard. So they do maths lit, and then they can't do that. So education is a big, big, big issue. Kind of derived from our Minister of Education a number of years ago that said the only level of education we need to teach in South Africa are 2 letters, 4 letters, A, N, C, and X, because then we will stay in power, and then we'll get voters. And that was, a statement from the Minister of Education. She's no longer the Minister of Education, but it's kind of where we are. We bought an education system out of Australia that was chucked out. We bought it, adopted it here, and it doesn't work. It doesn't create thinking styles for that. So what we've done is we've looked at this and said, well, how do we help the learners solve this problem? So we are at the moment in the process of developing a number of education AI bots. Now there's tons of extra lessons and maths and all these things out there. What our bots are doing is they are autonomous. They work alone, they work independently, they are loaded with empathy, emotion, counseling skills. There we go. See, I did use them. And all these things. And they are empathetic towards a learner trying to understand a certain aspect of schooling that they are struggling with. And it'll go over the point, it'll help you. And you can ask a bot the same question 100 times. and it's not going to get impatient. It's not going to say, we've run out of our time. Your 1 hour extra lesson is finished. I don't have time for you. It's Saturday night. I need to, it's Sunday night before the exam on Monday. You can sit with a bot and it'll explain it. And it's been amazing. You go into these bots and you say, so explain quadratic equations to me and how that unpacks. And it'll go, well, you say, I don't understand. Well, what about this? What about that? Here's a video to watch. What about this? Come back to me there. Try that. Okay, let's go right back to the beginning. And it's that sort of level that teachers just do not have the bandwidth, the capability, or the emotional support to do that. AI is standing in that gap to do that. So we've put together AS and A levels, which are taught across Africa. We've got South African caps in English and Afrikaans for matric across 7 different subjects. And these bots are going out there to help students who don't have access to textbooks or good teaching, and they can sit all night with a bot that'll quite happily, all they need is Wi-Fi. And that's another agenda for another webinar. But I think if you get access, you've got education. There is no excuse anymore because we've solved that problem. We're standing in the gap for education for matrics. Are they taking it up? No. Why? AQ.
Wow. Wow. And do you foresee a future then where we don't need teachers at all? Or is there something else where do you think this is going to go?
I think, no, teachers will always be with us, but their role will be different. I think they need to be facilitators of learning rather than teachers, because I think the way we assess school needs to be different, not learn facts, regurgitate facts, pass, but understand facts, apply to life, graduate. I think that is very different. And you can do that. But, having that conversation with government, which I've had, it's just met with, like, don't come and rock the boat. It's taken 10 years to put this curriculum. We can't change it. We're only now getting our head around how to assess this. And I'm going like, well, if it takes 5 years to change anything in the education, just by saying that, you're already extinct. So how do we do this? There's a whole bunch of schools that are already in this thing. And I was talking to a guy from the largest online sort of school in Africa, and he was going, this is how we want. We are facilitating learning through online education, and we are then finding applications through this. There's one school that we were looking at. They get through their curriculum in a third of the year and spend the next 2/3 finding application and practice in real life. So they put these kids into real life combat, and they go there and go, we've now learned, whatever, spherical triangles. Now let's go look in architecture and go and help architects build round buildings and how to do this. Where's that? Go look at a building site, go look at a factory that they make shirts and unpack that, and look at this, and go to a farmer and unpack economics and all these things. And that's what it is. It just equips learners to be so much better in life. Instead of, how long does it take after school to find life? It's another 10 years after matric to find what life's about. Why don't we do that at school?
Wow. Now, Bruce, as you've been working with this, your global collaborations have expanded dramatically. And I know that we often refer to some of the Scandinavian countries, especially Norway, in terms of leading the way with education. Tell us more about those collaborations that you've got involved with.
So some exciting news. So, Norway and Sweden are known as the origin of unicorns. More unicorns have come up, and we're not talking about horses with horns. A unicorn is an entrepreneurial business that reaches $1 billion at IPO. Okay, then it's known as, and you think like Facebook and all those races are unicorns. So at their first IPO, which is their first shareholding release type thing, and The incubators created in Norway and Sweden are world class. They know how to scale. They've got access to technology. The infrastructure in those countries are top notch. So to get a toe into that sector is absolutely profound, and it's not easy. And we've just recently been headhunted into that. So M37, my AI bot factory, which is not even a company yet, it's still a project within our innovation sandbox, that got headhunted into, and we've been accepted into a Norwegian technology incubator as one of their, as sort of cohorts. And we are yeah, chuffed as happy unicorns. And I think it's not like, wow, in 5 years time we're going to, but I don't know. We've had a couple of meetings with them, and we start still very early days in this process. And by the time this goes out, next week will be different, and the week after that it could be exponentially different. But we are very, very excited to be recognized and honored and looked at a point where we can actually gain traction in this sector and be able to then contribute and collaborate and cooperate with some of the best thinkers in technology, and to be able to leverage. Because boy, if we can do this in Africa, can you imagine what we can do when all the cogs work in other first world countries? So we are very, very excited. I've got my passport ready, my suitcase is packed, my toothbrush is bought, and we are ready to go global on this environment. So yeah, exciting stuff.
Wow. And so, I mean, the education environment and leaders in education, and of course, I think of teachers are all leaders in their own right because their job is to influence and so on. What are the other kinds of clients and leaders that you are seeing that your services, whether it's Thinking Sensei or the bots or all these things, where are you seeing the opportunities, and who are the kind of people that are taking you up?
At the moment, we still do a lot of work in the NPO, NPC, NGO environment. So there's that social side, and we've got a number of bots that are interactive into that. We've got one bot that is an expert in social law, NPO tax law, as well as NPO policy development and all the associated fundraising and the rule. It's a very regulated environment, and people starting an NPO don't realize the amount of hoops and red tape in there. So to make that easier, I just created Nancy, and we gave Nancy an LLB and an income tax certification, and we like trained her up to this thing. And she is the first line of offering for anybody starting an NPO to sit there and go, okay, what about this? Do I need this? What about, who wears the regulations? How do I write a policy for procurement? How do I write a policy for hiring staff? What about this? Do I have to declare this? How do I get that? Can I earn a profit? How do I run projects? Where do I employ? All those questions are all answered now, not by a chatbot, which is a scripted yes, no, if this, then that, but an AI bot that understands the environment and can access new stuff as it changes. So if the tax people change the law, Nancy automatically gets updated with that and is able to interact straight into that environment and offer good, solid advice. So there's a lot of that sort of interaction, filling the gaps. That's really where AI helps with that. And we've done that with market research. We've done that with finding a lot of innovation ideas, testing innovation, finding various things. Is that, oh, I think this idea is good. We put it through an innovation environment run by AI, run by some clever bots, and overseen by me with that human element. And we can literally test and fast track innovation, probably 20, 30 times faster than we could do 20 years ago, where you had to develop one. Let's go get it 3D printed. Let's go back. We can run these simulations, and we can just see whether it's a new food or a new widget or whatever it is that we can do that a lot faster. And then one of the exciting areas that we playing around with AI is with speakers, professional speakers. And we run the Red Jacket Speaker Bureau, which is part of another company that I'm involved in called Voices into Africa. And we've developed a number of AI bots that go and do deep research and not just Google search, not just AI front end. It's not going to chat and tell me what is. Are we talking deep research? These things take 30, 40 minutes to go and run their scripts, because their scripts are, 18 to 30 pages long. So it's not just a prompt. These are deep research stuff. They're able to scrape data together, and they're able to help position speakers, help to position ideas. And then we've got a bot that actually books or finds opportunities for speakers to speak at, depending on their profile. So we've got a number of kind of things where we're automating, but always, again, because of this fear of AI, we put people in place that are able to facilitate that place. So what we call ARPs, a real person. So we have bot, ARP, bot, ARP. So we've still got that thing, because the world is not fully automated and running on AI yet. We've still got those things. But the idea of having an AI bot as a board member and an AI bot as a validation or an ethics officer. I know there's one country that has a member of parliament that's an AI bot. And I think this is where we're going, and it doesn't have to be a physical android sitting there. It can just be something that you pass all decisions through, or that listens in on all the meetings to make sure that you are compliant to the Constitution, compliant to all the policies and all that. Because no human can read a Constitution and all the policies of a company and remember it all and be compliant. But AIs can. They read and they remember everything, and then can comment on that based on that. That we cannot do. So everyone says, oh, AIs can't be human, but humans can't be AI. It's a two-edged sword. You've got to understand that. And we need AI to bridge the gap of our incompetence. Yes, we are incompetent. Yes, we need AI. Yes, we can collaborate without sacrificing jobs and culture and ego.
This is such a fascinating conversation. But before I go, there's one more question that is kind of burning for me. And what I'm hearing a lot from leaders are overwhelmed. They're burning out. They are struggling to keep up with change, and they've got so many pressures. There are multiple domains. But if I had to be really simplistic about it, I would say that there is a thought leadership part of leadership, and there is a people leadership part of leadership. Where are you seeing that you can see that these sort of tools can actually help? A lot of leaders are sitting with this overwhelm, and they're not even sure they've got the bandwidth to learn a bot or this kind of thing. But surely there is a way that these sort of technologies can actually assist leaders who have this incredible pressure around thought leadership and people leadership.
What's really exhausting in life, Ian, is trying to be something you're not. There's so many people, this idea of, what do they call it when you're hoping you're not going to get caught out because you're living this false life. I think so many people start living their life trying to do things that you are not. It's like, a fish trying to climb a tree. It's not right. And I think we need to be authentic. I was just having a good conversation with someone before this meeting, and I've said so many times again is that the pendulum in life is swinging, as it does always, but it's swinging more and more. We've swung out of the COVID, we've done a post-COVID swing, and we've done in this. And I think we're fast moving the pendulum of life into the quadrant of authenticity, where people are craving real. Now, the opposite of real is false, unauthentic. It's living a life. It's masking. It's putting lipstick on a pig, hoping to go, looking pretty. It's trying to be something we're not. It's the life of plastic surgery and cosmetics and fancy clothes and false innovation and false online profiles, and living our life through the lens of a filter, etc., etc. And I think more and more people are dropping the filter and getting into this world of authenticity. That is where leadership wants. We need to stand as leaders in that authentic, understand what it is to be authentic, understand what it is to be real, naked, and vulnerable, and then put your hand out and invite others to join you. And I think that is where leadership goes. And it's not, oh, you need to act like this because you're a leader in this business or this, and you've got to wear this color suit with this power tie and this shiny shoes, and you got to say these things, and this is how we learn all these blah 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 blah. It's like, join me on this thing so we can have a one touch horizon look at a future thing to engage stakeholders. And it's like, oh, we learn all this nonsense. Why, like, let's sit down and have coffee. Let's sit down and be real. And I'm finding coffee shops, and I visit coffee shops all over the place. And even in Cape Town on a cold day like today, people are in coffee shops and it is packed, and people having real conversations to become real with it. That is the future of leadership, and AI can make it more real at a faster pace.
Wow. Now, that is a very powerful note to end on. I'm going to add one little question. It's simply this. Is there a question that you wish I'd asked, or is there another comment that you would love to give before we wrap up?
I think in closing, we shouldn't be afraid of the future. We shouldn't be afraid of our past, and we need to embrace who we are and where we're going, because to live authentically in the moment is all we have. So let's put all our effort into that. We can't change the past, we can't influence the future, but we can live for the now. And I think I've heard that a million times over my life, but now it is so real. Be real, be now. There we go. New tattoo for my arm.
I love that. And I mean, as you know, conscious leadership is one of my things. And this sounds like a way where we can leverage technology, not be afraid of it, use these AI tools, but actually to be more present, to be more real, to be more authentic, not in opposition of that. I think that's really, really cool. And what a great message. So, Bruce, where do people get hold of you? What's the best way for someone to get hold of you? Should they want to employ the services of a Thinking Sensei or continue this discussion?
So I'm easily found, Bruce Wade. Google me, but the best place would be brucewade.co.za. All my information on there, list of books, list of my keynotes, workshops, and engage with me there, or on LinkedIn, or meet me at a coffee shop and we'll have a real cup of coffee together.
Love it. I love it. I think the first time you and I ever met in person was in a coffee shop at a hotel, which was fantastic. So, yes, love it. I'm with you all the way. That's where the real stuff happens, is in the coffee shops.
Definitely.
And thank you, Bruce. This has been fabulous and been lovely to pick your brain. And I know this is just the tip of the iceberg, but really appreciate it and give it an opportunity to add fuel to this quest of liberating leadership.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Once you have coffee with Bruce, there's no turning back, though.